Hello everybody, Nora here. I am hiking in Perrot State Park today, and I've been thinking about this video for a while now. But I'm going to show you some of our spring ephemerals today. So spring ephemerals are our wildflowers that come early in the spring, and ephemeral means short-lived, so they don't last very long. You want to look for spring ephemerals in the deciduous woods, where we have a very short time, whether you're in Wisconsin or Minnesota, between when our ground thaws out and plants can begin growing and when the leaves leaf out on our trees and shade underneath them. So spring ephemerals are growing underneath our deciduous forests. They come up really fast in the spring and they don't live long because they're trying to get their flowers out and they're trying to get pollination done before the leaves come out. So I'm going to flip my camera around here and show you a few. I'll post a map of where I'm hiking today. I'm just on a short little loop and you can see tons of flowers on this loop. And I'll kind of stop and go when I get to some flowers that I want to show you. So flipping you around. These are the first flowers that I'm going to show you today. These are called rue anemone. Again, a very early bloomer in the spring. They kind of have these lobed leaves with the 3 rounded points on them. And they can be white, sometimes they might be pinkish or purple. They can vary a little in their color, but they spread through a rhizome or a root in the ground. Here you can kind of see some that are a little more pink in color. But you'll often find them then in these kind of big patches where they carpet the forest floor because they spread through that root. We can see some purple flowers scattered along here as well, and I'll give you a better view of some of those in a second. Let's check out this one right here. This is a type of violet. All of our violets, and we have quite a few violets in Minnesota and Wisconsin, but they all have the same kind of shape. There's 2 petals on the top here, 3 on the bottom. If you look inside, you can often see nectar guides, or those lines. Let's see if I can, there we go. Those lines that lead into the middle of the flower where insects can find the nectar, we call those nectar guides. And we'll often see them. And they have these kind of big heart-shaped leaves on them. Okay. This is not a spring ephemeral, but I'll point it out anyway. This is garlic mustard. It is super invasive. So once it gets somewhere, it spreads really, really fast. There's lots of efforts to get it out because it can outcompete all the native species that we see here. So it kind of spreads into this thick, and I'm sure I'll find a group of them that I can show you. But these leaves are edible. This plant came from Europe. We brought it here. People brought it here because the leaves were really good in salads. So you can eat the leaves. They tend to get bitter towards the longer summer goes on and once it gets really hot out, so collect them now if you want to eat them. I've also heard of people using the seed pods that will develop as the seeds inside as a substitute for pepper, so I guess you could try that out. Always double check with a source before you consume anything that you find in the wild to make sure it is safe. But yeah, there's lots of, go over here, garlic mustard. So you could have yourself quite the salad if you came out and collected some garlic mustard. We also see more of the rue anemone, kind of some different colors. These ones are a little pinkish purple, more white, so they can be a little bit varied. And we'll keep walking and see what else we can find. I don't know that this flower is a true spring ephemeral, but we find it in May and into June. This is our wild strawberry. So the flowers have those 5 white petals around a big yellow center, and the leaves are kind of toothed and they're always in 3. So I know a lot of people teach their kids leaves of 3, let it be. And this is a great example of one that doesn't apply to that rule. We have quite a few plants here with leaves of 3 that are not dangerous, and like wild strawberries, you're going to want to know where these are because you might want to eat some tasty strawberries later. So that leaves of 3 rule is great if you have young kids and you just Kind of don't trust them yet to go out and be looking and touching different plants, because poison ivy certainly is not fun, and everybody knows that. But once they get older, it's great to start teaching them some of the different plants that do have 3 leaves that aren't dangerous. Let's see what else we have in here. Even as I walk along, it's just so pretty. All the ruin anemone with the violets mixed in. One of my favorites. Ooh, let's go back over here. This one can be hard to miss. Here's another leaves of 3 let it be plant that rule just doesn't apply. We see the 3 leaves. Again, these leaves look a lot like poison ivy leaves might. But this little flower is called a jack in the pulpit. This is the jack, and this is the pulpit that it's standing in. These can be really easy to miss just because they're never very colorful. They can be kind of a deeper purple color, but even then they tend to still blend in really well with their surroundings, and those leaves can just kind of be easy to overlook. Hopefully we can find some in a little bit that might be a different color. These are pretty light colored, but I'll see what I can find. Here we can see a really pretty patch of those violets growing all along the side of the trail here. And then over here, they're not quite flowering yet, and I promised myself I would only talk about plants that are flowering right now because there's so many cool plants in this forest. I'm already breaking my rule, but these are wild geranium, and we can see that they've got buds and they'll be blooming really soon. The ones in my yard are already blooming, and I can post a photo of those. But it's kind of a light purple flower that you'll see blooming here soon. But these leaves are pretty distinctly shaped, and so are the buds here before they bloom. So you might see those early and then make sure you want to come back and take a look at the flowers when they're out. Here is a wild geranium. That is already blooming. So that's what they look like when they bloom. I don't believe this one is a true spring ephemeral either, but I'm seeing a lot of it, so I might as well mention it while I'm out here. This is aptly named Star-Shaped Solomon's Seal, and we have quite a few different plants with Solomon's Seal as part of that name. This star-shaped one has these little star-shaped flowers at the end, and there's kind of a zigzag to the stem a lot of the time, which you can kind of see here. But lots of these are coming up before they bloom. You'll see those little white buds at the end, and then when they open up, that star-shaped. Again, let's see here. You can kind of see that. Having trouble focusing. That zigzag shape. Lots of them coming out though. There's a good zigzag in there. Alright, I'm getting to my favorite part of this walk. The flowers are about to be everywhere and super exciting. So right here on the hillside, they're starting already. You can see all these big white flowers. These are large flowered Trillium. The tri in Trillium is for the 3 petals. It's got 3 sepals and then 3 big leaves. So these leaves you can see kind of look like the jack in the pulpit leaves, but much bigger. And could also be confused maybe with poison ivy. So again, that leaves of 3 rule just super doesn't apply to a lot of our plants in the forest. Don't leave them be. Actually, maybe you should leave these be. These are protected species, so you may not pick a large flowered Trillium, but you can see them all in the hillside up there in these black raspberry plants. Ooh, you can even see the pollen really well on this one. Ooh, something's been visiting. So these will, again, spread with that rhizome or that underground kind of rootstock. See them just coming out. So they tend to grow in large patches like this. You'll find them, and we'll see. I'll just keep walking for a second. And you'll see more large patches of them all over the hillsides here in Perrot right now. Right, here's a much bigger Jack in the Pulpit than the one we found before, and you can kind of see the darker color, and then they get that purple color on them too. They do tend to look kind of stripy usually, and the inside tends to be fairly light in color. But the pulpit, or the spathe I believe it's called, can be pretty varied. But again, those big leaves of 3. When they're coming out of the ground, you'll see this sheath on them down here before they sprout up and flower, so that can be another thing to look for. Here's another great example. I'm going to be really careful though, because it's right next to some stinging nettle, and I don't enjoy that very much. This one, however, is very dark on the underside, so there is a lot of color variation with these. This one, pretty dark on the outside. Avoid the nettle. Yikes. I feel like we've covered Jack in the Pulpits, but some of them are just so cool I can't help myself. So this one has a much darker color on the stems, but a fairly light color underneath compared to the last one. But very big, kind of stands out here in the landscape, but very pretty stem on this one. Okay, one last Jack in the Pulpit. So this one is that sheath I was talking about. You can see it growing inside. The sheath will split open and it will kind of spread out the top, but this one hasn't flowered yet, and this is what it looks like before it pops out. Another thing you'll find on the hillsides, sometimes mixed in near that large flowered Trillium that we talked about, that big white flower, are these smaller yellow flowers. This is large flowered Bellwort, and might have 2 or 3 flowers on it, but this one looks like it just has 1. They are always, if you look, the stem goes through the leaf and they nod down these bell-shaped flowers. They have 6 yellow petals, but they kind of droop like this, and sometimes that can make them hard to find, just because their leaves might be covering up the flower and that yellow might not stand out very well. So sometimes getting down and looking close can help it stand out. Right behind it up here we have a Maiden hair fern kind of coming out of those curled, like these on the ferns. Whoops, got a Trillium in the way here. Those curled heads, we call all the ferns that are unfurling like that, we call them fiddleheads. You might hear people talking about eating fiddleheads. These are not the ones you want to eat. You want to eat the fiddleheads on ostrich ferns. Again, these are maidenhair ferns. But anyway, back to the large flowered bellwort. You can see there's more coming here, but we'll see if we can find a bigger patch of them. Lots of times you might find a bigger clump of those as well. So let's go see. Here's a better maidenhair fern for you. So the next one I'm going to show you, you can see all the Trilliums again on the hillside, is I think one of the hardest ones to find. It has these big heart-shaped leaves that look a little bit like the violet leaves I showed you. They're typically much bigger, they're kind of fuzzy, they have very fuzzy stems, and then all the way at the bottom under those fuzzy stems is a purpley maroon colored flower. It's kind of got 3 points on it. This is wild ginger, and the rootstock of this plant, when it's crushed, it does smell a lot like ginger, but this is not like the type of ginger you would cook with. And its flowers are located really close to the ground because it is pollinated by ground-dwelling insects like beetles. So not like bumblebees that can fly and land up on the flowers. They're all ground-dwelling insects, so it just makes it easier for them when the flowers are under here. But that makes it very hard for you to find. A lot of these have already flowered. After they flower, they develop a little seed capsule that's usually taken by ants, and it's dispersed. The ants bring it down and store it. Lots of times they'll sprout underground from the ant, I guess, granaries we'd call them. We can see more here. Here's a good one. So look for that small purple flower near the fuzzy stems down there. It's got some white inside. Very cool flower on those wild ginger plants. Here's a bigger clump of that bellwort to show you that large flowered bellwort. This is one of 2 bellwort plants that we have in Minnesota and Wisconsin. The other one looks very, very similar, but the flower is smaller and it's much paler. It's almost like a white or a cream color. And they call that sessile-leaved bellwort, or you might hear it called wild oats as well. Just can't resist. Here's another, this is a really good patch of wild ginger. And then when I go down underneath, there are all those flowers in there. Pretty cool, one of my favorites. It's just so rewarding when you find them because they're so tricky. Apparently now I'm just in wild ginger territory. Here's another big patch. Again, these plants are spreading by that rootstock, so you'll often find them in big patches. And if I look up, you can see all the beautiful trilliums on this hillside. Everything's in this area. It's just beautiful. So many other plants. We're going to have to do a fern class or something. More of that large flowered bellwort hiding in all these ferns. More on this side too down there. One other one I want to mention quick. Again, not really a true spring ephemeral, but it's in here enough that if you come out to look for these other ones, you're going to find it. So this is called small flower buttercup, or I learned it as aborted buttercup, just because the flowers look so small and kind of like they never finished developing. So that's another one that is you can easily walk past it. But it's all over. It's so small I have to zoom way in so you can see it. But it's all over the wood side here, mixed in with the much showier flowers that we were talking about. So those were some of the flowers that I found this week on my walk at Perrot State Park. Again, I'll put in a map here so you can see the trail that I walked on. It will be highlighted in yellow. Best way to get to that trail is if you if you park in the maintenance shop of Perrot State Park, and there's a trailhead leading off from there, and it goes in a nice little loop. So again, take a look at that map and you can see it on there. I also want to mention 2 different apps that you could download on your phone for free, and those might be a big help. The first one is the Minnesota Wildflowers app, and even if you are in Wisconsin or Iowa, if you're in the driftless region, that should still be a helpful resource. The second one is the app Seek, which initially I didn't like very much. I didn't think it was very accurate, but I think it's getting more accurate as more people use it. And in that one, you can just take a photo of a plant and it will help you identify it, or use your camera to view it, and it should tell you. It kind of starts out with the family of the plant and then goes hopefully all the way down to the genus and species. You might not always get there, but most of the time I found on that walk I took that it did work and it was pretty accurate. So that's another one to check out. You could always double check the Seek app with the book if you're not feeling like it's right. But again, those spring ephemerals are very short-lived flowers, so get outside this weekend. That walk in Perrot is a great place if you're not sure where to begin, or any deciduous forest that has a trail through it. And let me see what you find. Share your pictures. Feel free to ask questions if you find some flowers that you can't identify, and I might be able to help you out. Have an awesome time outside exploring. Bye.